lavender field, and there were these little ETs out picking lavender. And it sounds hilarious.
Just like
what were they doing?
Just like the movie.
Absolutely happened, and it left physical trace. Could there be a human genome project that's trying to protect the human genome, and a genome project for Gaia, the Earth? Could there be? There could be all kinds of things going on that are beyond our ability to say, that's happening by people who are selfish and invaders, and that's happening by people who are the good ones.
Yes.
And I think that sort of dichotomy and dualism that I read on your blog is the exact script that Majestic would want people to buy into to support interplanetary war. And I think that there is another...
I think a paranoia over interplanetary war per se, and that scenario, is laudable. Okay, in a certain way, we understand that you're coming from a heartfelt perspective when you talk about let's not get caught up in polarities, okay? But what we don't want to do is analyze this scene, this scenario, and the realities that are out there, and say we've come to definitive statement where we can say there are only good ETs. Now let me tell you why that's dangerous as well. Because what that does is leave people, humans, and humanity possibly in general, in a vulnerable position, because they are then going around following ET like the Pied Piper down whatever road they're taking.
No, I have always said, and unfortunately you haven't read my books and things, but
actually I have.
Well, and I have made it very clear that there are two things that are equally dangerous: the deification of these visitors or the demonization of them. Each are equally dangerous, and I've said this since the early 90s.
And then we're in agreement. But what you said on stage was not that.
I didn't deify them, and I didn't demonize them. My point is that we're living in a universe together. We're going to have to live together in that universe.
Absolutely.
The solutions are not going to be name-calling and we're better than you are, and those are in service to self and those are the service to others, and this whole thing. Because I think that we have to look at this from a much larger picture, and that is not only Earth, but the whole cosmos is going through a quantum moment. It is not just an Earth moment. It's a universal moment.
Absolutely.
And the hallmark of which is universal peace. And the hallmark of which is good. And so it is also true that interstellar civilizations are not allowed to leave their biosphere until they have become in agreement for peace. Now, and...
Okay, that's an assumption.
This has been proven. Because if these,
no way, nothing's been proven on this planet.
If these civilizations
on that degree of sophistication,
well, if they were here, if they were here and they were invading and they were hostile, they would not have waited for us to have the kind of weapons we have today. They would have absolutely shut this civilization down.
On the contrary, I mean, there's actually we have to actually get into a whole sociopolitical look at what it is to be an ET spacefaring culture in search of planetoids or planets and building new environments, and then what you do with them. In a sense, you can actually take the Earth as a microcosm, and you can look at how did it go when we took over different continents here. And what was the model, and then we get to space.
No, this is a huge problem. You're engaging in an anthropocentric projection onto interstellar civilizations.
As above, so below.
Well, in your belief, but I think that you're completely incorrect.
All I'm saying is we're part of the universe, and that you can't eliminate, and there's no definitive decision on this part. You're making absolute statements.
Do you think our classified projects have traveled interstellar yet?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, they have not. Okay. Now,
we've got evidence that they have.
Well, I'd love to see you prove it, because but
we don't have evidence, but in May 2001 you said that we have superluminal capability.
Yes.
What do we do? Go to Pluto with superluminal capability? It takes 5 seconds.
No, because they're not allowed to use it. Now, here's something that there is a quarantine on this planet until we become peaceful. And this is why, if you listen...
There's a philosophy that there's a quarantine.
No, there is. And if you look at even what Neil Armstrong said...
Why? Because an ET told you? I mean, really, let's get down to it.
Well, let's get back there.
We're all in
let's talk about what
communication with
Neil
different
Armstrong
races.
was heard saying. It's in Timothy Good's book, Above Top Secret. You can read it.
Yep.
And I'm sure you have.
A mind-controlled astronaut is what you're talking about. You're going to give me testimony from a mind-controlled astronaut.
No,
Let's
but
hear where this goes.
He said that when we were basically warned off the moon, and that's why we didn't continue.
And I believe these warnings exist. There has been evidence that we're warned off Mars because certain craft have never made it there, have been shot down, have been disappeared, have had technical problems that haven't been explained by NASA.
One can put a xenophobic spin on that, or one can say perhaps there's a wiser cosmic order that says that until a civilization reaches a certain amount of civility for the civilization and peace, they are not allowed to travel amongst the stars. That the entry ticket is peace. And I think that is the situation.
Okay, I understand that's your philosophy.
It's not my philosophy. It's what the evidence... This is not how I started out. This is what I have found to be true from many different witness testimonies and the observation overall and aggregate.
But our witness testimony would contradict that.
Well, fine.
So what do you do with that? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll have to compare notes because, really, to be honest with you, this is valuable. Because what happens is, for better or worse, we're both out there. We're both investigating these questions, and they are open questions that actually
they are, but I think it's rather unhelpful if you go onto a blog and say that what I'm saying and doing is sinister. I think that, I have never said anything harmful about you guys.
It's insidious. The reason it's insidious
and I think that this is exactly the kind of thing. And I'm going to absolutely, you invited me to an interview, I'm going to provide an interview. If you want to overtalk everything I say, you can overtalk what I say.
You overtalk us.
But I am telling you that I'm being interviewed. And so the point is that if...
It's mutual. See, you don't know this, and I'm sorry. We didn't have time to tell you our philosophy of how we conduct an interview, but I did kind of warn you that we had differences of opinion.
We have differences of opinion, and that's fine. But I think the most dangerous thing we can do is say everyone has partial information.
Right.
To start making sweeping judgments that are negative. And you can say, well, it's not negative, we're just saying that they're in service to self versus service to others, and couch it however you wish. But if we go down that path, we're already creating a new cosmological us versus them, which is the absolute recapitulation of the mistake on Earth for the last 10,000 years. I think we can do better than that. I think we have to learn to look at these things, and let's say that everything that your philosophy and how you're viewing this is correct. If it's 100% correct, I would still say the path of wisdom is education,
absolutely,
elucidation, engagement peacefully,
absolutely,
higher states of consciousness, all of this. I don't think it consists in characterizations, name-calling, what have you. Now, that goes on the diplomatic front and between nations on the earth. And I think we have to be very careful not to engage in that sort of anthropocentric projection of the current state of duality of the human condition on these visitors. I think it may be much more difficult to make those kinds of assessments. But if we go down that path, what we'll be doing is that we'll be dragging the baggage of the old era into this pivotal time, this embryonic time, where we're trying to transition to a new civilization, the hallmark of which will be universal peace. I don't think we're going to be going into a period of time of competing planetary systems having wars. And I think that this is, although that is the Scientological view and it's many of the eschatologists' view, I think that actually we're going to go through a quantum transformation that's global and interplanetary that will make this quite clear in the coming years, if not months. I think that time is getting very short for how much more time we're going to have before there's this large transformation. And I think the other thing is to say, I would say to people, if there is a civilization that is here for their own purely selfish interests and have not a shred of altruism or concern for humanity or Earth, those are the beings I would want to meet with first. And I have said this for years. Because you need a diplomatic initiative to North Korea and Iran and China more than you do to Great Britain, if you're an American, let's say.
Absolutely.
And so this
but
is
you can't be in denial of the potentiality.
There's no denial here. I'm not some sort of Pollyanna fool.
Well,
I mean, and that characterization of being in denial. I'm not in denial about anything. I'm just saying that.
Wait. You're personalizing this in a way that it's not personal. In other words, I'm saying what I said is I didn't direct it
Jan
to you.
can give me what you wrote on the blog, and I'll show you what you wrote on the blog.
Excuse me. I said that what you said on stage was insidious, and it's insidious because what it does is leave again humanity. Look, let's both agree
it's a
here.
Real misdirect.
We are in love.
It's a real misdirect.
We both love humanity. We're both here to make sure that we make it through this next era.
Right.
Okay? And we can say we have a common goal in that sense.
Absolutely.
And when I say it's insidious, I'm not saying you personally are insidious. What I'm saying is what you're saying leads to an insidious state of affairs if people out there were to become disarmed and completely vulnerable and allow, like I said, ET to take over the sovereignty of the earth and of humanity
This is not at all. I've never suggested
to develop
that.
on its own. But there are implications to what you're saying when you say all ETs are good.
Your implications.
And we're using the words good and bad. Let's be honest. We're using the words good and bad because we have to use language, and we're just using it in a simplistic way to cover a very wide spectrum of what it means to be good philosophically and what it means to be bad philosophically. And we're not naive, and we're not looking at this in a black and white way. So let's not go
but I think
there.
we have to be very careful because that slips into that very quickly. That language slips into that paradigm very, very quickly.
And it could be misleading, and I appreciate that.
And I think it is misleading, but I think the other thing that it's also very dangerous. I think that I'm not at all suggesting that humans disarm. My whole message about humans empowering, not only in consciousness, but in organization and in every other way. And moreover, you said that we need to be armed. Well, armed with what? And I think that.
Well, that's another discussion. Let's talk. We can talk
knowledge, but
that's
we're going to.
I mean, knowledge,
spiritual,
absolutely.
and this is the chief purpose of CSA.
Knowledge is to question constantly, and so what we're not positing is answers here, so much as let's keep exploring. And at no point do we decide that all, quote unquote, all ETs are good. Because suddenly we have a paradigm that says you cannot leave the planet beyond a certain point unless you believe in, quote, peace, and unless you have attained a certain level of civilization that means that you are therefore good, all good, because and therefore better than humanity. There's sort of an implication under there.
And your alternative would be what? Conflict with the ones who aren't?
No, that's polarizing.
It's a model of the universe.
So what's your answer then?
Multi-dimensions.
Okay.
What's your answer to these ones that are in service
it's complex.
to self?
It's more complex.
The ones that you see.
There are no limits.
Okay. My response to this is to agree with you that it's a very complex situation, and there may be alien agendas which we are not able to understand, just like the farmer can't understand what the farmer's doing or what the veterinary surgeon is doing. If you approach a wild animal because you want to give him some food, the wild animal is going to run away because he doesn't trust the human. There are all sorts of aspects to this that we may be very presumptuous in our ability to understand, but my point is that it's dangerous, and I'm not even saying it's a deliberate misdirect, but I do believe it was, personally, I believe it was a misdirect to lead people to believe, with the authority position that you have in the UFO community, that if anybody feels that that anything other than all ETs are friendly, then they're somehow working on the side of the Illuminati. That's a polarization that is not true, and we don't agree with that at all. We think that there's a big maybe category where for sure some ETs are friendly. I've met some of them personally. I don't even think that my abduction was ill-intended. I think that this was a program in some way for something which I'm doing now. You may have had a parallel experience. But I don't know what's happening. I'm willing to roll with that wave because I don't think they intended any harm to me, but they sure as hell weren't military. That wasn't a MyLab operation.
No, but my point is, though, here's what I said.
But we don't know
my point
these
is that there's no evidence that these visitors are hostile.
Give me 20 seconds, But we don't know. Hang on. We don't know. But neither do you. And you shouldn't say that you know when you don't. That's my point.
Yeah,
Well,
let's get to the place where the fact is...
I want to hear Steve's response to that, because he doesn't know, and you're presuming to know,
Exactly.
and you're capitalizing on your authority position in the UFO community, and that's irresponsible, because you're leading people who are feeding